had been driving for Uber for over a year, and he thought he'd seen it all. Rowdy drunks, couples making out in the back seat, even a guy who tried to bring his pet snake along for the ride. But nothing could have prepared him for the passenger he picked up one eerie, fog-filled night. It was nearing midnight when Jake received the request. The pickup location was on the outskirts of town, near the old, abandoned industrial district. He hesitated for a moment. There were always stories about shady activities out there, but his rent was due, and he needed the fare. As he navigated the winding roads, the fog grew thicker, wrapping around his car like a shroud. The street lights were dim and flickering, casting eerie shadows that danced along the pavement. Jake's GPS indicated he was close, but there was no sign of anyone around. He was about to cancel the ride when a figure emerged from the fog, standing unnervingly still by the side of the road. Jake pulled up and rolled down the window. "You called for an Uber?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. The figure nodded, its face obscured by the hood of a dark cloak. Without a word, it opened the back door and slid into the seat behind Jake. The door shut with a heavy thud, and a chill filled the car. Jake glanced at the rearview mirror, trying to catch a glimpse of his passenger. "Where to?" he asked, forcing a smile. "Just drive," the voice said, low and gravelly, sending a shiver down Jake's spine. He swallowed hard and put the car in gear, heading back towards the main road. Silence settled in the car, thick and oppressive. Jake tried to make small talk, but his passenger remained silent, staring out the window. The only sounds were the soft hum of the engine and the occasional creak of the leather seats. As they drove further, Jake noticed something strange. The fog seemed to be following them, growing denser the further they went. The street lights barely penetrated the gloom, and the roads became increasingly deserted. "Mind if I ask where we're headed?" Jake ventured again, hoping to break the unsettling silence. The passengers slowly turned their head towards him. "You'll know soon enough," came the cryptic reply. Jake's grip on the steering wheel tightened. He had a sinking feeling in his gut, but he pushed it aside, focusing on the road ahead. Suddenly, the GPS rerouted them to a remote location on the outskirts of town, near an old cemetery that Jake had always avoided. His unease grew as they approached the gates of the cemetery. The iron bars were twisted and rusted, barely hanging on their hinges. Jake's passenger finally spoke again, their voice almost a whisper. "Stop here." Jake pulled over, his hands trembling. "Are you sure this is where you want to go?" The passenger leaned forward, and for the first time, Jake saw their face, pale, almost translucent skin stretched over sharp, angular features, and eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. "Yes," the creature hissed. "This is where I belong." Jake's heart pounded as he watched the figure open the door and step out into the fog. The passenger turned to face him one last time. "Thank you for the ride," it said, its lips curling into a chilling smile. "Consider this a warning. never pick up strangers in the middle of the night. With that, the creature vanished into the cemetery, swallowed by the fog. Jake sat there, frozen, until a loud knock on his window snapped him out of his trance. He jumped, only to see a police officer standing outside, flashlight in hand. "You okay, buddy?" the officer asked. "What are you doing out here?" Jake stammered, I was just giving a ride. But my passenger just disappeared." The officer gave him a puzzled look. "There's no one out here, and no one should be. This place has been abandoned for years." Jake didn't argue. He thanked the officer, turned the car around, and sped away from the cemetery, vowing to never drive near it again. For the rest of his life, Jake couldn't shake the memory of that night. The fog, the strange passenger, and the unsettling destination haunted his dreams. He continued driving for Uber, but he always avoided late-night pickups, especially those on the outskirts of town. The midnight fare had taught him a lesson he would never forget. Sometimes, the monsters are real, and they might just be looking for a ride.